On this week's episode, we're joined by Illinois State head men's basketball coach Ryan Pedon. From his playing days at the College of Worcester to beginning his college career as a graduate assistant at Miami of Ohio to building a reputation as one of the Midwest's best recruiters, offensive minds at programs like Illinois, Butler, and Ohio State. Coach Pedon's path to the Missouri Valley Conference has been built on relationship building, player development, and program building. After spending more than 2 decades learning under respected coaches like Gross, Kowalczyk, and Holtman, Pedon was hired in 2022 as the 20th head coach at Illinois State University. Since arriving in Normal, he has steadily elevated the Redbird program. Illinois State has improved its win total in each of his first 3 seasons, captured the 2025 CBI championship, and advanced to the NIT semifinals in 2026, and produced one of the most efficient offensive teams in school history. Now entering year 4, expectations around Redbird basketball are growing. Coach Pedon, we're excited to have you with us. Welcome to Deep in the Valley.
Hey guys, great to be with you. Thanks for the invite to come on here, and it was great to talk hoops.
Absolutely. So, Coach, let's dive in, right? Let's start at the beginning. You grew up in Ohio, played your college basketball at the College of Worcester, and spent most of your coaching career throughout the state. How did growing up in Ohio shape your basketball journey and kind of eventually your desire to coach?
Yeah, so being in Ohio a lot of times gets acclaimed, I think, as a football state more than anything. I grew up in Columbus and was a diehard Buckeye fan growing up, football and basketball. And I think the basketball part's just always been in my blood. And a lot of my professional roots, many of the close relationships I have, the friendships I have, the experiences I have after being in this profession for 27 years are rooted from people that I've met along my journey in the state of Ohio. So I have so many great memories and friendships. And of course, from my high school years, being coached by a legendary high school coach, Gene Millard, to having my experience at the College of Worcester, playing for Hall of Fame coach Steve Moore, and then starting my college coaching career with another Hall of Famer, Charlie Coles. Those are my original mentors in the world of basketball. So many great people and relationships that are rooted for me all in the state of Ohio.
And Coach, I think you're about 5-6 years younger than me, but there's a tie to Ohio State University in my alma mater at the University of Northern Iowa, because Eldon Miller was the head coach at the University of Northern Iowa and was the head coach I worked for. And then actually Earl Bruce coached at Northern Iowa for 1 year after he left Ohio State. So there is a Buckeye Panther relationship there. Growing up in Ohio, what do you remember about Coach Miller's Ohio State coach teams?
Yeah, some of my earliest memories are his teams. I can remember, this will sound funny, but Ohio State made a run, I believe it was 1986, to the NIT and won the NIT championship. I think it was 86. And so sound funny, but I was so invested in it. And some of my earliest memories of just being a diehard fan. And I went around the neighborhood posting flyers that I had colored and made on the telephone poles in our neighborhood, advertising so people would watch the Ohio State game that night. And it was the first time I'd ever had an interaction with the police officer, and he turned the lights on, and it scared the hell out of me. I got back on my bike and tried to drive away. And of course, he stopped me and he said, "Son, you can't do that." And so I can remember doing that. So it was a kind of a funny anecdotal story there that leads back to some of my earliest memories. But Eldon Miller, what a gentleman he was. When I was at Ohio State coaching, I think it was year 2. So this would have been probably the 18-19 season. We actually played. Eldon Miller's son, Ben, was coaching at UNC Pembroke, and we brought he and Eldon back for an exhibition game. And what a really cool moment. And I introduced myself to him, and I can remember just telling him, like, I had great admiration for you, Coach, all the way back to my childhood. So it was cool. It was a really cool moment, and he's one heck of a coach for sure.
Absolutely. Like many coaches, your path started with long hours as a grad assistant and then in operations roles before eventually moving on to the coaching side of the bench. What were some of the most important lessons you learned as a GA or an operations guy that maybe still stick with you today?
That's a great question, because I think so many, for all of us in any profession, right? You learn some of your most valuable lessons, I think, in your early years. The stick-to-itiveness that's required. We're in a society today that values instant gratification so much. And I think the big picture, the long haul, the going through the tough stuff and enduring, you just see less and less of it, I feel like. And that's a whole different conversation. But what I will tell you is some of the lessons that I learned is continuing to stay the course. And the great Larry Hunter from the state of Ohio would say, just keep chopping wood. And I was 28 years old at Kent State. I had been an administrative assistant for 2 years, essentially at Miami of Ohio, and 3 years at Kent State. And I was 28. I had no health insurance that came with my job. I was making $12,000 a year. I was watching over student athletes' study tables for the whole department Sunday night through Thursday night for $20 a night. And I was selling ADT security systems on the side. Okay. And here I am now 20 years later at age 48 in a totally different position, thankful that I stayed with it and that I was able to push through those moments. There's really tough moments that we all encounter in life. And no matter what profession you're in, there's going to come some real hinge moments that you're going to have to make a conscious decision. Do I throw in the towel or do I keep going? And I think what you have to keep asking yourself is, what do I want? And make yourself answer that. I try to do that for our players all the time when they're going through tough stuff is, what do you want? And if you're able to verbalize that, even write it down on paper and continue to chop wood and chase that dream or the goal that you may have in front of you, it can happen. And not that it'll always happen, but it can definitely happen if you stay with it.
Absolutely. So you then worked for some outstanding coaches throughout your career, John Gross, Todd Kowalczyk, and Chris Holtman, among others. When you look back at those experiences, is there maybe a piece of what you learned from each one of those folks that maybe you put into your daily operations every day?
Absolutely. I think along the way, it's really important that you reflect and that you take notes, whether those are actual notes or if they're mental notes, because I think when you get to the back half of your career, and I don't know, I think in the sweet spot of my career. I hope I have a lot of time ahead of me, but I also have a lot of time that's behind me as well. I think I value the reflection more than anything because I think experience can be your greatest asset in our profession, and I'm sure in all professions. So the experience of working for different guys, learning about what you would want to take from that particular person or coach or leader, and also learning maybe what you wouldn't take. And those can be equally as valuable. And it's not a knock on any particular boss that I've had at all, but I think at the end of the day, we all have to be ourselves. And if I can take bits and pieces that I've learned from different guys that I've worked for, which I have, I think that can become a very powerful influence on my leadership now that I have my own program. So I know this. Along the way, I've been influenced by some great coaches and I've worked with some great people. And that has taught me the value of your personnel being great human beings first. Okay. And I value high character people that are high achievers, people that have an ability to get over themselves, people that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Maybe that sounds cliche to some people, but I don't do well when I'm with people that may have egos or agendas. I'm not. And I think that's a reflection of some of my experiences and the sum of my experiences as a younger coach. And I've learned that as being, I think, the most valuable lesson of them all.
Thank you. And I agree with you on all those points. But Coach, one of the things that we consistently hear when people talk about you is your talent as a recruiter, right? And so you've built a reputation as a tremendous relationship builder throughout the Midwest, especially in Ohio. But can you talk a little bit about the art of recruiting in today's society and college landscape? And is it still primarily about developing relationships and making folks feel like they fit within your program and within your university?
Yeah, I think the fit part, that won't change. I think there's so many other influences nowadays. The transactional nature of college athletics and the recruiting, it's completely transformed. But I do think relationships still matter. At least the young man that I'm looking for value that. And I do think it's changed, Chris, over time. I was just talking to someone last weekend at an event and they talked about EJ Liddell. Okay. And he was asking me questions about EJ Liddell's recruitment. And I said, you know something? I said, a recruitment like his, even 7 or 8 years later now, would be completely polar opposite and different than it was when I was recruiting him coming out of high school. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, let me show you this. I showed him, I have notes in my phone, right? And I have them organized. And I had notes from every single conversation that I had with EJ, his parents, people around him, his high school coach, his mentors, his grandmother, you name it. And I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. The amount of hours that were put into recruiting, that was the norm. That was the norm. I remember so many nights in the spring, summer, and fall walking around my neighborhood. My neighbors probably thought I was a weirdo walking around, but I'm on my phone and I'm typing as I'm talking and I've got my earphones in. And that has really changed, Chris, about recruiting because, again, it's speed dating to some level, even in this high school recruiting world, where now it's at that level, it's based around the finances and the money in most cases. And I think there's a balance. I'm not willing to go there where it's completely about that. I'm just not. I think you always have to, as a leader, you got to be true to who you are and how you want to recruit. But I got to coach and recruit to my convictions. And my convictions are always and always will be and always have been rooted in relationship building. And I just think that's how trust is built. You don't microwave a relationship all the way into getting married in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? Like organic relationship building is something that I really value. And I'm in constant pursuit of guys that at least have a value of how trust is built. And that takes some time and effort and getting to know each other.
Well, talk a little bit about the Wolf family too, because there's Cedar Falls, right? It's clearly they have a good fit in Bloomington Normal and they fit into your program. But talk a little bit about how those conversations start and how do you get them to spread the red?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think I would root this back to respect that I have for Ben Jacobson and how he built his program. In my lifetime, I don't think there's anyone that's had more sustained success for a longer period of time, 20 years, than Ben did at Northern Iowa. And how he built his program very much reflects how I would like to build ours. The type of characters in the program, the style of play in terms of toughness, in terms of sacrifice, in terms of the way they play together. I have great admiration, and I've said that since I got the job here. So I think what my eyes told me when we went against Landon Wolf, when we were playing against him, my eyes told me this is the kind of guy I really see something in. And I think for all of us, I think that you have to trust your instincts. And we made the phone call, and my very first question to him was, would you consider transferring in league? And yeah, when you open up the hood here and realize his family is deep rooted with the Panthers. So him making a decision to transfer a few hours east to Illinois State, a league foe, I felt like that was something we had to address right away. Once I got the idea that he was definitely interested and was looking for the right fit for he and his family, then it became a little bit more of a normal recruitment. Does he fit our values? Does he bring to the table from a basketball standpoint what we were looking for? And does he match who we're looking for as a human being outside of just being a heck of a player? And we really matched. We hit it off. I drove over there. I remember going to a coffee shop and meeting him and just having some real conversation, more than anything, life conversation, and kind of getting a feel. And he came over the next week and one thing led to another. So very thankful for him entrusting us in our program. And the thing I would point out too, he was here 2 years. It didn't always go his way. It wasn't like this was a 2-year like storybook ending where all 2 years everything was perfect. Like he dug himself out and kind of reinvented himself throughout his first year. And even early in his second year, wasn't shooting the ball great, but became our best offensive rebounder, became our intangibles guy, our hustle guy, our glue guy. And then his shooting came back around. And by the end of this, man, what a valuable piece. I don't know that there's any player on our roster that was more valuable than him in terms of what he brought and what he meant to winning for us.
You bet. So you spent 5 seasons at Ohio State and helped coach multiple NBA draft picks while making the NCAA tournament. In 2022, when Illinois State opportunity was, when you were approached with that opportunity, what was it about the program, maybe the university, and then the Missouri Valley Conference as a whole that made you believe that was the right fit for you as a head coach?
Great question. And this is something I discuss a lot when we have recruits that come to campus. I want their families to understand our journey and how I got here and how we got here as a program. So first things first, I was born and raised in Columbus, so I was very happy there. I had friends and family that came to all of our games that were very close to my family, and I could have stayed there probably for a long time and been very happy. What interests me about the Illinois State job was that I felt of what I knew. I hadn't been on campus, but I did know that it was a very passionate fan base. I did know that they had very nice facilities, and I felt like they were very committed to the basketball program. It was a basketball school from afar of what I knew. And I made some phone calls, asked some questions of people that would have known, and everything kind of kept checking off for me. The biggest thing that I usually emphasize is this. Here's a program that had fallen on some hard times, but had pockets of real success, but haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 1998. And I sat down and thought about it. I said, wow, that is an unbelievable stat, the longest drought in the conference. Most guys, I think players and coaches would probably turn the other way and run away from that. I ran to that. Okay. And I ran to that because I saw real potential here. I think this is a sleeping giant. And I stand by that. It has all the makings with the proper commitment. This has all the makings of being the type of program that can be not just relevant on the national scene, but be a real player on the national scene. I believe that. And I think what I saw from afar and what I've experienced here is everything here, if we want to do it, it's here for the taking. It is. And I think this can be as good as any job or the best job potentially in our conference. And that's saying something because there's a lot of storied programs in this conference. But I know what this place is made of. I know how bad we want it. I know how bad our fans want it. And I need players. I say this all the time. I need dudes that are running to 1998, not running from it. And those are the kinds of guys that are going to help get us there, is the guys that see this as an opportunity, not an obstacle.
And so you've been there 3 years. You've improved the program on a wins basis every year. And I think fans probably focus on the wins, but you've had back-to-back postseason appearances. You had the 2025 CBI championship run. Last year, you get to the semifinals. And we talked about this last week with Paul Cabas, right? Like when you guys hit that shot against Wake Forest on the road, as Valley fans, I think one of the things that makes our conference special is that we were all Illinois State fans that night.
Yeah.
We celebrate those kind of wins against ACC foes. And so you've had those things. So now you've got momentum after that NIT run. After that 23-win season and semifinal appearance in the NIT, what excites you the most about where the program sits today and moving into the future?
Yeah, what excites me the most is, first and foremost, we've built the program from our foundation when we took over in the exact mold that we wanted to. High character young men, guys that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. May sound like coach speak to some people, but this is a very organic formulation here of how we've built our program. The two foundations of our program, you win with people, and then the all-in approach that's required. I don't do lukewarm. I do all in, or you're against us, period. And that's why the fit is so important. So in the image that we set out to build this program, I'm most proud that we, as we stand here today, after 4 years heading into year 5, the image of the program, the infrastructure has been built exactly how I wanted to build it. A very healthy balance between high school recruiting and transfers, developing, fighting for the program model, not the AAU team year by year model. And I realize you can't control all of that, but building it in the mold that we've wanted to, that's what I'm most proud of. What excites me the most, everything that we want is directly in front of us. It's squarely in front of us. It's our job to punch this thing through. We've gone from 9th to 7th to 5th to 3rd. And it's our responsibility. It's our duty. It's our calling, in my opinion, to put this program back to where we feel it belongs. And that's not an easy process, especially in a league like ours. High basketball character, elite level coaching, basketball schools that are highly committed to their basketball programs. So for us to get from where we were to where we are to where we want to be, it requires everybody. And that's the guys in our locker room, the coaches in our offices, the people in our community, and the leaders at our institution on an institutional level. So I feel really good about all of that. And it's our job now. It's our job to keep pushing this thing forward.
So you've added some interesting pieces this offseason, transfers like Zaxton King, Louis Simona, Noah Cleveland. I live in Springfield, so I got a chance to see Zaxton King play quite a bit last year, and so he's a great addition to the Valley. But if we had a vote, you have two preseason all-conference selections in Johnny and Chase. How do you balance who's coming back with those newcomers that we mentioned? And maybe what stands out about the group and how they fit together and what you're trying to do to mesh them together to maybe climb that ladder 2 more rungs in 26, 27.
Yeah, for sure. So I think you see this across college basketball is this time of year, you're bringing a bunch of guys into a room that haven't played together. We have a unique blend because we do have two of our cornerstones, our bookends, as I say, our point guard and our big man here returning. That are both 1,000-point scorers. They're our top 2 leading scorers. We're the only team in the league in the Missouri Valley that can say that they're returning their top 2 leading scorers. So that's great. But there's so much else out there for us to figure out about this team. And that's sort of the fun in this process for a coach is it's like a giant Rubik's Cube. And you don't see all the colors necessarily together, and you're trying to find the combination and how to figure this thing out. And you got to be very intentional about from the very beginning. We had our first team meeting last night. We got to be very intentional about teaching the younger guys or the transfers, who you are. Okay, I've got to get these guys up to speed on, hey, this is going into year 5. This is how we got here. This is who we are, and this is who we've been. But most importantly, moving forward, this is who we have to be. And I want to know in our room, I said, who's our Mikal Bridges? Where's our Josh Hart? Who's our Mitchell Robinson in here that's going to get the offensive rebound that seals the championship? Like those kinds of things, because when you have transfers and you have this meshing of transfers that have ambition and you have returners that have ambition. We have 2 guys that were redshirting last year that we are so excited about that have ambition. And now you have some freshmen that are coming in that you feel really excited about as well. It's our job to mesh all that together and to get people to buy in to what this team needs, not necessarily what feeds their dream in the immediate, but what our team, this team, the 26, 27 version of the Illinois State Redbirds, what this team needs from each of them. The sooner we can establish that, buy into that, and then ultimately execute that, I think those are the teams that win most consistently in college basketball.
So you just said you had your first team meeting. So you've got guys back on campus. What does June and July look like now in Bloomington Normal for those guys and maybe you and your staff on a daily basis for the next couple months?
Yeah, we got to establish who we're going to be, first of all, establishing our culture, establishing our work ethic. This is a culture of work here that can never be compromised. For us to be the best we can be, there's no path towards greatness through average effort. So we got to establish for everybody walking in this gym, in this locker room, just how hard you have to work and what it's going to take. So you got to be able to define that. You got to establish your work ethic. And obviously you got to establish the value system that we're going to have. Like, hey guys, this is who we are, but like, this is what it takes to do this on a daily basis. And in our program, I just don't believe you can be one person, a really responsible, high character, high IQ, unselfish, responsible basketball player and teammate if you're not those things off the floor as well. And there's a consistency required. I just believe that 99.96% of us human beings, we've got to do it a very specific way. And I take great pride in the fact that we've been here 8 semesters as a coaching staff, and 7 of those 8 semesters, we've set program GPA records, and all the way up to now having a team GPA of 3.71. So 3.71, and we won 23 games. Like, that matters to me. I get it. Like, I'm ultimately going to be hired or fired. I'm going to be judged based on the wins. I get that. But if the model that I'm speaking to you is truly what I believe, then there's got to be a consistency of greatness on and off the floor. It's just how I believe. That's my belief system. It's how I'll always coach. And it's what got me here, right? I had to do it a very specific way. I'm a nobody. I was a Division III role player. And over 26 years now, I've worked my way into being a head coach, a position that I very much value, a job that I'm very proud of being the head coach here at Illinois State. But come hell or high water, we're going to do it a certain way. And it's a way that we really believe in.
That's awesome. Fantastic. So last year's team, I thought was a lot of fun to watch. Offensively, very efficient. When you have fans, whether it be Illinois State fans, Valley fans, when they watch Redbird basketball, what do you want them to see or take away about your philosophy of just trying to compete in basketball games?
Yeah, sure. So we've got core values that we abide by on and off the floor, values that I want to transcend the basketball floor. We also have court values. And every time someone walks into our gym, whether it be for a practice, a workout, a weightlifting session, or a game, I want them to see those court values. And those are real simple. Dominate the effort plays, be a great teammate, set the rules, play with an edge. And if you're asking me what would I want people to see in us, in our program, it's a very simple answer. Those things right there. I want us to live out our core values in life and in a competitive arena. But on the court, what you're asking me, it's those four things. Dominate the effort plays, be a great teammate, set the rules, and play with a real competitive edge. And if we do that, I'm a strong believer that if we're true to those, more times than not, the results will take care of themselves.
Does the style of your team that you just asked for, does it reflect your personality?
It better. Yeah,
Yeah.
it better. I always think a sign of a well-coached team is that a team takes on the personality traits of their head coach or their leader. And my best player's better, my point guard better, and ultimately, I think a measure of our success would be that our team does as well. And I was not a great player, but I think I was a great competitor and a very prideful competitor and a guy that valued my role. To value your role, regardless of what it is, there has to be some level of self-awareness and self-confidence. Right? They talk about the street sweeper all the time. The greatest street sweeper in the world must value what he brings to society. And I value all of our players equally. And I think if I do that, they'll do that. And as a result, will hopefully it become a reflection of my belief system and maybe who I'm trying to set out to be as a coach, as a leader, and as a competitor.
So your team has been outstanding at home the last couple of years, and Sethview Arena has really become a difficult place for opponents to play. What does a great home court environment mean to a program trying to compete at the highest level of the Missouri Valley Conference?
Everything. It does. We were 14-2 at home last year. That was the top home record in the Missouri Valley Conference, tied for the second best in the history of our school. So it's one of the things that we've always talked about in setting out to make this place the toughest place in the Missouri Valley Conference to play. And that's saying something because there's a lot of really tough home environments. There's tough places to play, really well-coached teams. If you're a little bit off on any given night, you'll get popped in a heartbeat in our league. So some of the things that really matter, I think, in terms of chasing a championship, all root back to how did you perform at home? How much of a home court advantage did you have? Obviously, there's a performance, there's a preparation, there's an attitude that's required. When that ball is tipped, knowing that you're in the friendly confines of your arena where you've sacrificed so many of your hours, right? But also a pridefulness that no one is coming into your living room and taking what you want. And that's more what goes way beyond. I'm talking more of, when I say this, I'm talking way more on the coach or player level. But let's be real. You got to have great student support, which we've had. You got to have great community support, which we've had. And you got to have great loyalty, because knowing that you're going to take some shots off the nose for most of us throughout the college basketball season. I'd love to go 29-2 or 29-3 now because we're playing 32 games. I'd love to do that. But the resilience that's required from not only your team, but your fan base to not be discouraged and to get behind you, man, that can separate you in a heartbeat. And I think I've said this all along. for us to get where we want to go, our community at this job in this town, our community will be a shining light behind us. And they have been thus far, and I sure appreciate them, especially going through some of the tough struggles we did in years 1 and 2, going through the mud. You got to have some really loyal people, and I think we have that in this community.
So we talked to Paul Cabas last week, and he gave us some good insight, but sidestepped a lot of questions and said he'd rather let you talk about them. First of all, can you talk to us about the philosophy of building a non-conference schedule in the era of the net? And I know you've got a great road game at Purdue this year, but can you talk about, as you're building this schedule, are there any other fun non-conference games that you can talk about yet, or at least tease maybe to your fan base and the rest of the Valley?
Well, I wish I had more to tease because we still have a good handful of games to schedule. So our administration has asked me to not talk about the actual schedule until it's released for obvious reasons. But I will say this, the philosophy at this level, at my level, at our level here, can vary from year to year. Okay. This isn't a $14 million roster that I'm going to have every single year. And I know exactly how I want to schedule. Like, there's some real variables here at play. And if I have a team that hasn't played any games together and I have 10 new guys or 12 new guys on my team, like some of the teams in our league, well, my philosophy might be a little bit different than if I have my top 2 leading scorers back like we do this year, or our whole entire roster back like we did last year. So it can vary a little bit. On the whole, here's what I would tell you. If our program, assuming our program is consistently in a position to consistently compete for championships or be in the upper crust of the league, I want to challenge our team in the non-conference. I really do. And challenging your team might mean your record isn't as pretty at our level because we're going to have to go to some places rather than having Purdue come here. That's a pipe dream. 10 years ago, it might not have been a pipe dream, but now it is. So my philosophy is I really want to challenge our team as much as humanly possible, but also setting ourselves up for confidence, for success, and for ultimately being our best in January, February, and March. Because if you're coaching the Missouri Valley Conference, your paycheck is going to be earned in January, February, and March, period. And you can have some of the greatest non-conference wins, but if you're 500 in conference play, that's not going to do you a whole lot of good in a league that predominantly gets 1 or hopefully 2 or 3 bids to the NCAA tournament.
What's it like maybe transitioning from the Big Ten to the Valley, right? Is there anything that surprised you about the Missouri Valley Conference coming in as a new head coach 5 years ago? And maybe can you talk to the fans about the depth of the coaches in the league and how hard it is maybe to game plan and prepare from night to night in the Valley?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll speak on that first. If you look around the league, just in the last 3 coaching cycles, we have head coaches now in place at Iowa, at Indiana, at Kansas State, and at Utah State. And I may be forgetting one. I don't know. But those, I'm just naming those 4 off the top. Those are 4 traditional powers in college basketball. And it speaks to the high level of coaching that is in this league. There's no easy shortcuts to championship. There's no gimmicks to the top of the standings in this league. And many of the values that I learned in the Big Ten Conference, they apply here in the Missouri Valley 100%. I think this is a mini Big Ten every day of the week and twice on Sundays. It is a very well-coached league, a high basketball character league. You're talking about the Midwest roots for a lot of these kids. I know that there's national recruiting, but there's the predominance of most of these rosters come from the Midwest, right? And basketball is coached at a really high level, even at the prep high school level in this region. So many of the values that I learned, like you're a little bit off in terms of maybe you got a team that's a little bit selfish at a certain point throughout the year. Well, you better watch out because you're going to get popped no matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you are. Requires your best, both physically and mentally. And it tests you as a coach. There's a lot of long nights. But the resilience that's required to be successful as a coach, as a player, or as a competitor in this league, I'm sure it's important in every league. I just know that these I think it's at the height of college athletics. I do, because the margins are just so small. And what you see is there's more talented teams than others, but I think the variance between the top and the bottom in our league, it's much smaller than what I would say most conferences in college basketball.
I think you're right. So as you enter the 26-27 season, you just had your first team meeting last night, but over the course of the next weeks, what kind of goals will the team set together? Clearly, you and your staff are working on kind of the identity, the everyday identity, but will you set some goals and what you hope to see in 26-27 marching towards Arch Madness?
Yeah, sure. We've got objectives. We're not going to win the championship here in June or July, but are we setting ourselves up to have a great fall? Okay. How do you have a great fall? Well, you have a great summer.
That's right.
And how do we have a great summer is we got to establish and teach who we are, what we value, what we're going to be all about. And we got to be very intentional about growing as close and connected. I told the guys last night, it's one of our 4 objectives for the summer, but I want this room to grow as close and connected as any team you have ever been a part of in your life. Okay. More, in fact, more connected than any team you've ever been a part of in your life. And that doesn't just happen. It's not going to just happen by showing up at 3 o'clock for practice and being a good teammate on the floor. It requires intentional effort. It requires vulnerability. It requires dropping of your guard as a human being and saying, no, man, like, this is my teammate. I got to be intentional about pouring into him. And then the next guy will do that next to him. And the guy across the room will do that as well. Before you know it, you got guys that are committed to the same objective. And for us, growing as close and connected, that's the first step towards building trust. And if you're able to build trust, establish your work ethic, form your habits, now you're setting yourself up for a great fall. And if we ultimately want to have a great winter, but in order to get to that, we got to have a great summer that'll lead us on to September and October.
That's awesome. So, Coach, we always like to end these podcasts with a couple of softball quick hit questions that hopefully you'll enjoy a little bit. What is your favorite arena to coach in the Valley outside of Seth Q Arena?
God, I always hate this question.
That's why we love to ask it.
Southern Illinois.
Okay. Yeah. I'll tell you what.
This is the only place that I'm going to admit that publicly.
Great environment, though. Great environment.
It's Purdue. Purdue's one of my top 5. Okay. I don't know if it's the same architect as Purdue, but it gives me Purdue vibes in there.
Yep.
Just the dome, the shape of the arena, the feel that you have when you're down on the floor. And I think there's really good lighting in there. Yeah. I don't like to admit it publicly, but I would go with the Salukis.
Let's see, your toughest player that you've had to game plan for in the Valley.
I'd have to think on this real good, but Bennett Sturts would come to mind because he was just a weapon. He could hurt you in so many different ways, and you had to pick your poison. Do we want to take him away from the ball screen, or do we want to react to what he's going to try to do after the ball screen? I think Tyler Lundblade, from his growth to his last year, I don't know if that was I think it was his 4th year. I thought he was able to impact the game more than just through his shooting. And I thought his passing became a real intangible quality. And I thought he was tough to game plan for as well. And we sort of had to find our sweet spot on that one. I think we did a better job in the last one, but he was very difficult. Marcus Domask would come to mind because he was such a great passer. I thought he was tremendous. And those would be some guys I think that would come to mind. One more I would add is a guy that I always had great respect for, Malevi Leons from Bradley. Just the ways that he could impact the game. It wasn't always on the offensive end, but defensively, you noticed him and felt him more than anybody that I've gone against here in 4 years. So game planning with him in mind. When you have to game plan to stay away from a guy, when we're forming our offensive game plan, now you know you got a guy that really can impact the game.
That's right. Is there a glue guy on one of your rosters that maybe fans don't talk about enough? Like just somebody that you're thinking that he's a catalyst, he's the glue guy, and maybe fans don't appreciate them enough as a player.
Yeah, to be determined, I think, for us. I think that's a big question that I have. The same question you're asking me is ultimately with our roster makeup, I think we're going to need multiple guys that value that role. Isaac Erickson is a guy that stands out to me. He redshirted last year. He's 6'9". I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. But I also think what a wonderful young man, teammate, his humility. Like I told him, I said, I'm not trying to hit the home run right now in your first 2 months of being a live competitor here. You're off the red shirt. What I'm trying to do is get you to first base. And I think if you have guys that value and are willing to value hitting singles, I see great promise in those kinds of guys because that tells me about their character. It tells me that winning's important to them. And I think he's got a lot of these qualities that can really stand out and help us win games. Landon Wolf would be one that came to mind in my 4 years that really stands out because he was about all the little things. And I almost had to force him to be more aggressive at times offensively, but he was all about the team. And ultimately, that's what I was as a competitor. I had to find ways to become valuable. And I think when you have guys that have the right mindset and are unselfish and really care about winning, I think those guys are as valuable as the guys that drop 17 a night. I just do. I've been on championship teams, and I know those guys are irreplaceable. So I'm looking for who those are on my roster, but I gave you one name that I think might provide some clues to the future.
I love it. So one question we love to ask of coaches is if my co-host who is not here today, but if Brian Duttler and I were coming to Bloomington Normal to catch a game, where are you going to send us to pregame for a meal? And at that establishment, do you have a go-to order?
I would say Luca Grill is one of my favorites. The thin crust pizza I've always been partial to. I love it. I love their sauce. I think that's a go-to for sure. And that's an easy 5-minute drive to the arena. So it wouldn't be far for you. Pub 2, great cheeseburgers there. Now I got to put an asterisk there. You're going to have a college crowd there. So for two middle-aged guys walking in there, you got to have that awareness of that going in. And then Hacienda, Mexican restaurant here in town. Chef Special is what I go to all the time there. Chicken, rice, and cheese. I love it. Those would be the three I would probably recommend that give you a little bit of hometown flavor.
That's awesome. But hey, Coach Pedon, so thanks so much for joining us. This was fantastic. Learned a lot about you and your program, and we really appreciated the time. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you guys having us on. Thanks for what you do for Valley basketball, too. I think we have a story to be told nationally as a conference, and I'm with you. Like anytime we're out of league or anytime a team makes to the postseason, I agree with you, man. We cheer like hell for those teams. You might spend a couple of months throughout the year rooting against them a lot of nights, but man, there's great pride in this league. And our league, it deserves for its story to be told nationally. So I sure appreciate what you guys do for us, for our league, and it means a lot. And looking forward to another great season. It's an honor to coach in the league. I carry the Illinois state flag with pride, and we're doing our best to bring this program back to where we feel it should be.
Absolutely. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope this isn't the last time that we talk. Hopefully we'll get a chance to kind of chat throughout the season as you guys are progressing. But we appreciate you spending a part of your day with us. And so that's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate the fans spending a part of their week listening to us and talking about Missouri Valley Conference basketball. If you enjoyed the show, listen to it wherever you get your podcast, but like and follow, share it with a friend, and follow along as we cover everything that's happening across the Valley all year long, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago. We'll be here every week. For Brian Duttler, I'm Chris Bowser. We'll see you next time, Deep in the Valley. Cool.